Well, would you look at that, another video, and somehow I, who doesn't understand the concept of a 1 to 2 crit ratio.
You don't want to be like this. This is disgusting. This is awful in every way.
And barely has the motivation to even open Memory of Chaos on the best of days, has the audacity to tell y'all how team building works. And yes, admittedly, I am not great or knowledgeable at this game, or even possible at this game, if I'm being honest with you. But I opened Twitter and some of you are rocking teams looking like this and need to be taught that the L word you need to stay alive in content is linkshare, not lesbians. So in honor of that, have what I'll classify as probably the worst Star Rail team building guide of all time. Oh right, and I'm Rain. Hi, I forgot to mention that, but like it's in the channel name, so is this really necessary? Do I have to introduce my own? Let's get the most important thing out of the way first. What exactly defines a team in Honkai Star Rail? A team is a group of 4 characters that you put together to do battle. And that's about it. Like and subscribe. Jokes aside, there are a couple of basic concepts that someone needs to understand in order to know how teams work in Star Rail. And we'll start with the parts that the game uses to classify a character's gameplay, which admittedly is incredibly confusing because why would you use a lore term to describe a character gameplay archetype? Therefore, it means that people will get confused thinking that Jingyuan wants to pursue being autistically smart, or that Luca has no purpose in life and worships a smiley-faced black hole god. I digress.
We don't care.
Editor Rain here. Looking back, why do I pronounce Jingyuan's name like that? How do you even pronounce his name? You're going to hear about 17 different pronunciations over the course of my videos. I am so sorry. From a gameplay perspective, parts are used to loosely group certain characters together based on specific leanings and properties in their kits, and from that, the most likely roles that they will play in the teams that they're a part of. As of 3.0, we now have 8 of them, so let's zip through them quickly. Or not quickly, I'm not so sure how much I'm gonna yap about this. Hunt characters are damage dealers that specialize in high single target damage, with kits equipped to burn through a single target's health bar faster than you burn through your wallet trying to E6 Fei Shao, which I would also do if I had a job. But I'm making this YouTube video, so how do you think that's going for me? Erudition units stand on the other end of the spectrum, tailored towards AoE damage, AoE in this game's case being situations with 4 to 5 targets. Just as hunt characters can struggle in situations with large waves of enemies, it makes sense that Erudition's units' damage fall off notably in single target. Unless you're Big Hat Hurter, then you can just fucking do everything. Or unless you're Anaxa, I guess, who I think just wants to be a silly little guy, I don't know.
Rule number 1, do not call me Anaxa.
Destruction units sit in the awkward middle ground between Hunt and Erudition, like the Trailblazers sitting between their 2 moms, Kafka and Himiko, who will probably violently make out at some point at 4.0. They're middle of the road, usually having their damage output come from blast abilities, which are attacks that hit the center target for the most damage and then the 2 adjacent targets would fall off for those who don't want to use this strange space lingo, but can for the most part handle single target and AoE situations with decent comfort. They're also the most common archetype of characters to have survivability and HP related gimmicks, such as draining and gaining health, counterattacking, and becoming god for some of them. So in a sense, you could kind of see Destruction as the bruiser archetype. Yes, Hook is a bruiser, she will murder you. There is also whatever Shui he is doing. You go. Nihility is the path of characters that encompass those whose playstyle centers around debuffs, whether that be damage over time, supportive debuffs, or Acheron, just Acheron. She's debuffed with an absolutely miserable backstory. Girly, please get some therapy. Harmony units are your buffing support archetype, though having to listen to Robin sing every time I want to play the game is honestly turning into a debuff for my sanity by this point. Yes, I love the song, but can I please be free? Yes, I'm welcome to your world. Can you please let me go? Then we have the 2 sustain archetypes, Abundance and Preservation, and for those asking, no, I'm not going to talk about Wealth Sustain. Abundance is easy, they're the healers. Even though Gallagher and Linkshire sometimes want to pretend that they're DPS, no, they're the healing archetype. What they do for the team is heal, and then they heal again, and heal. They're healers. Preservation is the other side of the coin, as they sustain through damage reduction or prevention, with this most commonly done through shielding, but also including tools such as taunting, spreading of damage, mitigation, and team-wide defense buffing. We haven't had a new one in a year, so everyone's Aventurine has been working quintuple overtime in every single piece of content. This is the real reason why he will never know peace. Finally, the latest edition courtesy of Finan's Land of Yaoi and Depression, and the first and currently only path added post-launch, Remembrance consists of characters that use a specific type of summon known as a memo sprite. For the sake of this video, we're going to pretend that Remembrance makes any lick of sense. There are differences between a memo sprite and the summons that you see on other characters such as Topaz's Numby or Jingyuan's Lightning Lord, but I'm gonna be so real, I am too lazy to explain the differences, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna flash the differences up on the screen right now. If I remembered to do editing for this video, I'm gonna flash the differences up. If I didn't do it, then legally you're allowed to take away the global passive from my castress. Because of this, Remembrance's scope role-wise is pretty broad, being able to include DPS characters, support characters, and even sustain units. Again, we're going to pretend that this makes any sense. Understanding the parts of the characters is in a way understanding the dev's intent in terms of the situations that they excel in, as well as the potential archetypes those characters may fit into, which will make the next section of this video easier to follow. How do you slot these guys, gals, and gays into a team? Well, within each team, every character is going to have their role in that team, sort of like a band, except they're all hot, including the triangle player. These roles can also potentially shift and bend depending on the type of team as well as the specific damage dealers in the team. So let's just run through all of these. Yes, I'm going to just throw a bunch of words at you. I promise we can make it through this together. Hold my hand if you need to. The main DPS is just that, the main damage dealer of the team. Some people may also refer to these characters as the carry of the team. They are the spotlight hoggers, the ones that make the fandom weak at the knees and demand every single piece of fan art, lore thread, and zero cycle TikTok showcase video. The composition of a majority of teams is structured in a way to get the best out of the main DPS, existing to massage their ego and get them to poop out rainbow colored damage numbers. This spot is usually occupied by a Hunt, Erudition, Destruction, Remembrance DPS, or if you're playing an Acheron or god forbid a dot team in Big O 2025, Annihility unit. A sub DPS as well, it's in the name. They submit to the main DPS's dominance.
It's not me.
A sub DPS is a secondary damage dealer that's present to directly play into the game plan of the main DPS in order to maximize their damage as well as contribute a not insignificant amount of damage themselves. Some may see this differently to me, but I always see the sub DPS as not being determined by which DPS is doing the most damage, but more so whether the DPS's existence in the team is to primarily act as a supplement to the main damage dealer. Even if your Jade is doing damage as dummy thick as Topaz's investments, she would still be a sub DPS to the likes of capital THE Herta and Jingyuan because her purpose in those teams is to augment the main DPS's damage, and her own damage output is directly tied into what the main DPS is doing. Some characters can competently function as either a main DPS or a sub DPS, and that really depends on the structure of that specific team and how they're being used in it. This slot is typically filled by a character that is explicitly a DPS character.
Nah, I never knew that.
Though nowadays even characters from support archetypes are doing respectable damage because I guess war crimes are a group effort. Speaking of which, the support slot is usually filled by a Harmony or Annihility unit with their main job to provide buffs to the team or debuffs to the enemies. Finally, the Sustains, whose main job is to keep the team alive long enough for you to complain about why the fuck the enemy isn't dead yet, with this slot typically filled by an Abundance or Preservation unit. Yes, you can also run Sustainless, but that's a topic for another day and I'm not about to talk about old man broken back wealth tech. I swear, every patch people try to make him meta. I respect it though. Without getting too into the weeds about the specific nuances of it, these are the basic roles that 90% of teams will run on. The reason why I'm not going to dedicate more time to the different complications and fleshing out of these roles is because I only have one cup of tea here. I gotta keep the script moving. It's also because talking about the roles in depth for specific scenarios is a bit counterintuitive, as these are kind of wishy-washy definitions that will shift depending on the archetype and game plan of the specific team you're building. For example, the standard hypercarry setup for a typical team is something like this: a main DPS, 2 supports, and a sustain. But this will not be true for every team and every character, obviously. Some teams can function with 2 synergistic main damage dealers rather than a main and a sub DPS or a main DPS and 2 supports. Some teams like damage over time teams even work with 3 DPS slots playing off of each other. Certain damage dealers like Acheron need specific teammates in order to fulfill requirements their kits demand in order to play them at their full potential damage wise because of specific passives. Which means it's a lot more important to look at the tools you have in your disposal and figure out how to maximize their use rather than simply sticking Robin into everything. Well, I mean, you can do that, but it wouldn't always be optimal. Okay, well, I mean, it's Robin. It would usually be optimal, but Now that you know how to classify the individual elements, let's actually move on to how to fit them all into a team. You have the ingredients, now you can actually make a soup. For me, the easiest guiding principle in order to make choices related to team building is to just look at the Pride Win tier list. Jokes aside, most of it kind of just boils down to what is the goal of this team? Or to make it unnecessarily more technical, what is the strategy that your team is playing into in order to achieve victory most efficiently? I've made that sound incredibly vague and nebulous, just like religion, but I'm deliberately making it sound confusing. It's actually really simple, and to demonstrate that, I'm going to use two examples of characters that I play the most, Fei Xiao and Castorus. Fei Xiao is a hunt character, which means she's going to be best suited to single target situations like taking on elite enemies or in boss fights, or when the wave of enemies can be burnt down one by one very quickly. She is also a character centered around follow-up attacks, with a unique ultimate gimmick in the sense that it doesn't use traditional energy like other ultimates. Just this information means that you can potentially rule out support options where their main benefit is providing energy and prioritizing supports that play into the follow-up attack niche. This also makes potential sub-DPS choices easier, as there are dedicated follow-up attack sub-DPS options. The nature of Fei Xiao's kit means that her team kind of just picks itself. Now let's look at Castorus. For one, she is a character that wants to lose and gain HP due to her gimmick, as well as drains HP from the rest of the party as well, which requires healing. Therefore, shielders are basically a no-no. Eventually can finally go on a vacation with Ratio. She is also a character with a memo sprite and has her damage scaling off of her maximum HP, meaning teammates that can play into all those aspects like Treeby, Hyacinth, and Remembrance Trailblazer are more natural options, but that doesn't necessarily mean she can't use generally good support options like Cypher and Sunday. The way my lisp probably suffered saying Cypher and Sunday back to back. The nature of Castorus' kit also means that there's an option to dual DPS with other HP drain centered DPS options like Blade or the gay berserker man who refuses to wear a shirt. By understanding how your lead character works, or the broader archetype of your team when it comes to building them, like break teams, follow-up attack focus teams, damage over time setups, or including characters that have high skill point usage, high energy requirements, or want to take a lot of actions, it allows you to narrow down the options that will maximize the performance of that specific team. This neatly ties into individual character building in terms of their relics and Litecoin choices, as understanding what the team is trying to do as well as what the character is doing in that team can be a big influence, especially if you're building a character for a dedicated niche or trying to make a quirky build that you can post on Twitter, or doing stuff like DPS Linkshare, I don't know. DPS Linkshare players scare me more than Sparkle stands, and that is a monumental feat. No, I said feat. While many of the DPS units are rigid in the sense that there is an obvious best build for them, and most supports can be built in a way that makes them all-purpose and generally good for any team you can slot them into, again, depending on the team, you can switch out relics and Litecoins to better suit the composition, and that'll all depend on what you're using the character for. Building an ultimate spamming energy battery Soval for a definite Article Herta team is different to building her as a main DPS in her own team. Builds on characters like Xiaoqiu and Guanifan can shift depending on if you're using them in damage over time teams, or whether you're using them as a general debuffer for that team, or in the case of Xiaoqiu, using them with the DPS that they're attached to the hip of. Action advancing support characters like Sunday, Sparkle, and Bronya can have decisions surrounding their ideal speed value influenced by the main DPS of that team. A character like Yangqing can, okay, hold on a second, don't build Yangqing, hold on. The point is that nailing exactly what your team is doing makes narrowing down how your character should be built clearer. It means that you can even let your imagination run wild on potentially funky builds rather than watching a team guide video by a YouTuber who's just looking to scrape enough money together to get a meal from KFC. Wait, do you want to play Super Break Anaxa? Sure, go ahead. Do you want to play Burn DOT Himiko? Sure, go ahead. Do you want to play DPS Natasha? I'm going to look at you funny and ask if you're doing okay and offer you a cup of tea, but sure, go ahead. That's the beauty of pulling for premium support options. Which finally allows us to completely wrap up all the elements into a simplest checklist that can guide you into forming a team. Thank God, because I'm getting tired. Step 1 would be to figure out what the thing of the team is. Do you want to build on a specific DPS? Are you looking to build a team for a certain endgame mode like Pure Fiction? Did you lose your 50-50 and got Bronya's girlfriend and now need to figure out what a Sealer team looks like in big old 2025? Whether you're making a team for a specific mode, archetype, or character, determining what that thing is the first step. Step B, even though I said step 1 and I've suddenly changed to step B, would be to consider the potential characters that can slot in based on the purpose of your team and the potential synergies there, and decide on the 4 members of the composition based on that. This would be where you consider specific character synergies, as while a lot of the DPS characters kind of use the same template for their teams, there is still variance in terms of some characters preferring certain teammates over others. Step C or step 3 or step Omega, whatever we're calling it at this point, is where you would actually build the characters. Team building can be resource intensive, sanity destroying, RNG sickness inducing, and may take some longer term commitment. And therefore, in my opinion, it's really best to stick to building 1, maybe 2 teams at a time, instead of wearing yourself thin trying to build too many teams at once and now you're in a situation where your Finon is sitting with defense boots. Better to have 1 fully built team than about 6 different badly built ones. And finally, actually field testing the team. Compositions may have interactions and optimal play that you'll get a feel for and figure out once you've played with them more. Unfortunately, you do actually need to know how to use your character, not just stare at them. Though it is quite easy to get lost in our eyes. I can be your good little.
What's wrong with you?
So anyway, I've gotten some KFC, which means I should probably do an outro for this video. I hope this video was able to establish the building blocks of how teams operate in Star Rail and give at least a bare bones idea on how team composition and team building works on the ground floor. And if this video didn't do any of that, then elbozo, I'm hungry. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting the like and that strange button that says subscribe, but for now, take care of yourselves and I'll see you in the next one.